Good evening. Welcome to Columbia Heights Public Schools Independent School District 13 School Board meeting for Tuesday, June 14th, 2016. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome again. Ted, if you would, please read the roll.
Severson.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Larkin.
Here.
Palmer.
Here.
Landwehr. Here. Superintendent Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. Columbia Heights Public Schools mission statement. Columbia Heights Public Schools create worlds of opportunity for every learner in partnership with supportive small-town communities by challenging all to discover their talents, unleash their potential, and develop tools for lifelong success. Our core values are community, excellence, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage, and innovation. Next up is the agenda approval, adjustments, and announcements and correspondence. First up would be approval of the agenda. If I could get a motion to move that forward, please.
So moved.
Molly?
Second.
Natty, thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. The announcements are June 21st, Tuesday at 5:30, there'll be a school board work session here in the community room. June 28th at 7 p.m., there'll be a regular school board meeting. July 4th, which is a Monday, will be a holiday. The district offices will be closed. August 9th will be a Tuesday, which is the election primary. And then August 16th, which is also a Tuesday, 7 p.m., a regular school board meeting again here in the community room. Next up is correspondence. Superintendent Kelly, is there any correspondence tonight?
Mr. Chair and members, there's no correspondence this evening.
Okay, thank you. Communications to the board. At this time, any citizen or employee may briefly address the school board. The board will listen to brief remarks, ask clarifying questions, and if desired, request that administration follow up. The board will not take action at this meeting on requests presented at this time. Is there anybody that wanted to come up and speak? Okay. Move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda includes the minutes of the May 10th and 24th school board meetings, the May 17th school board work session, personnel report, and the treasury report for April 2016. If I could get a motion to move that forward, please.
So moved.
Laura?
Second.
Natty, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I ask that the personnel report be removed and considered separately.
For the purpose of?
Discussion of the consent, or the personnel report.
Okay, we'll go back and, so the consent agenda currently right now would be for the minutes of the meetings, the treasurer's report, and those two things, correct? Yes?
Right, everything except personnel.
Except personnel
Right.
report. Okay, I got a motion on the floor from Laura, second by Natty. Any discussion on the two items that are currently up for the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Ed?
Okay, on the personnel report, are we opening it for discussion now, or?
Yeah.
Okay, just
yeah.
like part of
Wait, let's do a
clarification.
motion in a second, so then we can just vote on it when we're done, if that's okay?
Sure.
A motion for the personnel report, please.
I just want to make a comment.
Let's do the motion in a second, and then have the discussion, is that okay? That's what we've
Oh,
been doing.
if you want a
yeah.
separate motion,
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
Sure.
So if I get a motion to move the personnel report forward,
So moved.
Molly,
Second.
by Laura, no discussion.
Mr. Chair, as before, I have not discussed these matters with Superintendent Kelly, and as we received clarification in the last two meetings, I understand she won't discuss these due to concerns about data privacy. So because I can't make an informed vote on the personnel report, I'm going to abstain, and that's the reason.
Okay, anything else? Any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote on the moving the personnel report forward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstains. Motion carries. Discussion reports, information items, reports from members of the board. Board members will report on board activities since the last regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. Ted, if you wouldn't mind starting tonight.
I had the honor of attending the graduation. It was a great event, as usual, and even though we had to have it in the gym this time, but I think everyone was very respectful, and it was great to see the students there, including Andrew Green. It was great. That was a highlight to be able to see him be able to graduate and be with his class. So he was injured, and so it's great that he was back and able to do that.
Yeah,
That's not a-
probably as much as we want to say about Andrew on camera.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's public. It's been publicly disseminated, so I thought it was okay. And he was at the graduation. So my apology. Also was at and I also want to say with James LaBelle being honored, the soldier, boy, what a way to honor the courage, our values, the core values of courage and community. He displayed great courage in what he did in the war and jumping on the grenade. So I hope everyone has had a chance to read his story in the newspapers, and then the selflessness of him doing that, the community values that we share. That it's all about others as well. So that was a very inspiring moment, even and an excellent choice, I believe, to honor him. Also was able to attend the Valley View PTO picnic, which was a great event, lots of fun, and I'm so thankful that they were able to do that and celebrate the end of the school year. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Laura?
Well, I had a few events. I'm kind of going over. It seems like it's been a couple of weeks since we've been here. I attended the final concert over at the Academy, so I got to see all the bands playing. It was wonderful. Then I attended the Avid picnic over at the park over there, which was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of people and watch the kids, hang out and get together and talk about their school stuff. That was pretty cool. And the graduation is always the feather in the cap of every school board member, is being able to shake the hands of all the graduating seniors. It is quite an honor to be able to participate in that. And I rather liked it in the gym. It wasn't hot, which was great. I've been to a few graduations in gyms that were very, very, very warm. And I kind of like the closeness of it. I mean, when the crowd started cheering, it was really loud. You can't hear it quite so well in the field. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm very thankful to be able to have that opportunity. I also attended a 916 board meeting. It was relatively short. We're going to be having a special meeting to review some of the bids for the Capitol View project. That is either going to be this Thursday or next Thursday, so I'll report out on that. And I will not be attending the next work study session. I attended the subcommittee on policy prior to this meeting and the chair meeting. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Maddie?
I also was at the subcommittee meeting on policy just earlier today. I was able to attend the Columbia Academy Band concert held here at the high school in the Performing Arts Center. It was fun to see the kids and the varying progression of the grade levels through the different bands. It was fun, and the passion of their instructors, their teachers, couldn't be missed. It was great to see. And the kids really respond well to them, so it was really great to see. I attended the 5th grade track and field day at the stadium. It's fun to watch them run real hard. It was a hot day, so they were out there working hard. Also, Columbia Academy had an evening 8th grade celebration. They made it clear it was not a graduation; it was a celebration, and we sat there. It was really well done. I think the kids felt really honored. The staff did a great job putting it together, and it was a great way to end the run of those kids, and they felt a lot of pride, I think, in their class, and and what was happening. And then, of course, my very first graduation as a school board member, I was excited to do it, but once I had the opportunity to do it, it was way cooler. Can I say that? Cooler. That's a school boardish word, right? Than I really thought it would be. It just exceeded my already high expectations to just be there and get such a great view on what's going on. It was great.
Molly?
Yes, I also attended the Columbia Academy Band concert up here at the high school in the Performing Arts Center. And everything that Natty said was absolutely true. It was a fabulous concert. The teachers' enthusiasm really showed through and carried over to the students, so that was wonderful. Also finished out some varsity track meets for this season. They had a really good season, and looking forward to next year. Went to the graduation along with the rest of you, and again, what an honor it is to participate in that. Congratulations to all of the graduates, and that's it.
Thank you. I also got to attend the Columbia Academy celebration, and they were clear, and I think that that's a fair thing. They did a really nice job. I was impressed. They, for probably 90 minutes, kept middle school kids, their attention, and they did a really nice job. The parents, the crowd was very respectful. So they did a really nice job. Hats off to principal at the Columbia Academy. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the tennis state tournament the first day when the kids were playing. They played a really tough team, but boy, I tell you, right to the end, it was really fun to watch. I'm not a real knowledgeable person when it comes to tennis, so a couple people helped me out, but they did a nice job. So congratulations to them. I also was at commencement, and it is way cooler than you would ever expect. And it is fun. My preference is outside, but I get the inside thing too. But again, the parents were respectful, the kids were respectful. It was really fun. It's always a highlight of the year. Several meetings with Superintendent Kelly. I've talked to some constituents. I had another opportunity last night. I went to the Hennepin Theater Spotlight presentation, and that's where it's kind of the state tournament for theater, and they give out awards, spotlight awards, and the way it works, it's actually a 2-day event, I guess, but the plays that get an actual spotlight award, they go on stage and they perform a scene from their play. We had some honorable mentions that were part of another piece of that, and they did a wonderful job. Boy, I tell you, the acoustics there are phenomenal, but it was so much fun to watch. That was almost a 3-hour event, and it didn't seem like it took that long. So again, to all the schools out there that received awards, nice job, and to our students as well. I had the opportunity the last couple Saturdays to work at Miller's Hill and meat raffle tickets to raise money for the All-America City trip that's coming up. And I just want to say a special thanks to the boosters. They are always super generous, and they make you work for it a little bit, but usually it's something fun, so thank them for that. And then the chair meeting and the policy meeting prior to this. And that concludes my report. Now it's your turn.
Thank you. Chair Larkin and members, since last we've met, there have been high school commencements, celebrations, last day of school for students, for staff, and I want to thank everybody for a really strong end to the school year. I got here too quickly, but I think everybody enjoyed the journey. I too want to congratulate the tennis team for going to state. We've had a tennis team since about the 50s, and it's nice to finally have gotten to state. So kudos to all involved. Summer Academy, in case you haven't noticed, started this week. And it's for our gifted and talented students, and not only ours, but for those in the region. And it's always wonderful looking out the window and seeing them coming. They'll be with us for the next month, and so Columbia Heights Schools is very happy to host that again this year. School board filings closed, and since there are only 4 candidates for 3 seats, there will be no Columbia Heights Public School Board primary this year in August. I attended the community picnic and splash pad ribbon cutting, and that was really an event. The addition to the park with all the kids splashing in that water looks like it's going to be great fun and well earned with the temperatures that we're having. It was very fun. Congratulations to the city for that idea. The admin team held its end-of-the-year retreat, and plans are being made for already the opening of the 2016-17 school year. Staffing continues over the summer because, as you know, we do have some people leaving the family, and then we have increases in kindergarten enrollment, et cetera, so we have to add. So the HR department is fairly busy over the summer, so we're still looking for staff. An organizational negotiations meeting was held with the cooks, the custodians, the clerical, and the educational assistants. And the board will be apprised, and there'll be a closed session for negotiations strategies later this month. Principal Robleski and I attended the end-of-the-year Tri-Metro Governing Board meeting, and that was hosted this year by Holy Angels. That's our conference. And next year, St. Croix Lutheran will be a host for governance, and so we'll be going out there to see their facilities. They also talked about putting on an arts facilitator or coordinator, which is new for the conference, but not new to other conferences, and so that's what will be happening there. And met with the for the final time with my superintendent mentees for the year. I want to congratulate them both. They're both going to be able to sit for their superintendent's licenses this summer, which is very nice. Director Holmgren, Stunkel, and Hollaby and I were in deep exploration of a state grant application for the expansion of the early childhood program for 4-year-olds. And that was a priority of the governor and the commissioner, and the legislature passed some funding for that. So we're going to be working on that, and that could possibly mean that for next year, we might have a pilot for 4-year-old students going to either all-day program or expansion of our already existing 4-year-old half-day program. And we'll keep you posted on that by the end of the month, because we have to decide to apply for that by June 30th. It's not a board-approved thing, but if we want to get in on the funding on the first year of funding, we'll probably have to act quickly. So we'll see. We'll keep you posted. I also attended school board meetings, the subcommittee on school board policy, chair meetings, and I met with individual members of the school board, and I want to thank each and every one of you that I met with for your time. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving on, next up is item number C, which is the OPEB trust. And Bill, I'll let you do the introductions.
Chair Larker, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly. As you know, the board put in place back in 2009 a OPEB trust for our employees as they retire, which is other post-employment benefits. And it really, what it does is it covers the severance piece of the health insurance for our retired employees. As you know, Wells Fargo Private Bank has been managing that OPEB trust for us. And tonight we have Todd Baker from Wells Fargo to give you an update on how that trust is performing. And I will quickly pass out the report for you.
Super. While Bill is doing that, as he said, my name is Todd Baker. I'm a senior financial advisor with Wells Fargo Private Bank. I'm one of many team members that are responsible for managing the board, for managing your OPEB funds. This is something that we're quite familiar with. As a team, we manage about 14 relationships like yours that average around $17 million. We're very familiar with this size and the purpose of these funds. The majority of institutional assets that we manage within our team are managed under the 356A guidelines. If I were in your chairs, I would want to know 3 things. Who's managing our money? How's it being managed? And how's it performing? Are you get a competitive return? So I prepared some information that Bill just handed out that I'll walk through with you and share with you the information, or some of that information. If you look at the portfolio on page 4, what you will see is how the portfolio is currently being managed. And the type of investment discipline we're using is something called strategic asset allocation. So you know this is something that has been used in our industry for many, many decades. It is used to manage the vast majority of pension funds in our country today. It's used to manage the vast majority of endowment funds in our country today. I cite those two as examples because they have very similar objectives. Long-term time frame, annual distributions to fund whatever the purpose was that the dollars were set aside for. At the bottom of this page on the left-hand side, what you will see is our target investment mix on what we're looking to target on a long-term basis. This was determined by partly your analysis of the return needed to get on these funds over a long period of time, and our use of strategic asset allocation to identify what mix of investments are likely to give you that targeted rate of return with the least amount of risk. And what you can see on the lower right-hand part of this page is that you are currently right in line with our long-term target for the portfolio. That has not always been the case, and it will not always be the case going forward. Usually there are, at any given time, we have something that we're overweighting or underweighting in the portfolio. But it just so happens, if you look at page 5, the bottom entry on the lower left-hand side, in April of this year, just after our February meeting, we rebalanced the portfolio to a neutral stance. So in other words, our long-term targeted stance that was due to some of the volatility that we saw in the market at the beginning of this year. As many of you probably know, this was a pretty tough year at the beginning of the year. The first 2 weeks of our calendar year this year were the worst 2 weeks in the financial markets since the literally ever. And so it was a pretty rough start. The portfolio did go into negative returns at that period of time. We've had some good performance recently, and you are back into positive returns. But at this time, we are neutral or right in line with our target mix. If you look at page 6, it'll give you the big picture breakdown of how the portfolio has been performing. So what you're looking at here along the top, you can see this shows the assets that you've deposited into the trust and any distributions that have been made. You can see that as we go down the page on the right-hand side, total deposits have been around $5,700,000. The next section shows you distributions that have been made, which prior to just now has been $1.9 million, but we are in process of a distribution right now as we speak, so that number is going to go up in literally a week here. And the adjusted balance then, so investment amount is around $3.7 million, $3,759,000, and the current market value as of the end of May is $5.2 million or $5,295,000. So the fund has performed, has earned about $1.5 million since its inception, and the return, I will say, is competitive, but it's challenged based on the low interest rate environment that we have been in through this period of time, and also based on the amount of risk that we're taking within the portfolio. If we were to look at how we got to that rate of return, on the bottom of page 7, you will see a breakdown of that performance. And it's pretty compelling when you look at where the returns have been coming from. So in the lower left-hand corner, about 2/3 down the page, you'll see where it says Performance Summary. And then as you go across that heading there, you'll see in the last 3 months, the portfolio was up 4.85% net of fees. Year-to-date, up 1.75 through the end of May. So that shows you the decline we saw at the beginning of the year, the recovery that we've seen since then, and since our February review, which was the last review. And on the far right-hand side, you will see that the return since inception has been 4.23%. And I wanted to highlight 2 things here on this page. One is the safe short-term money in this portfolio has been significantly impacted by the low interest rates that we have in the markets and that we've had over the period of time we've been managing this money. As you probably know as individuals, the risk-free rate of return, the rate of return on a 1-year short-term treasury bill is about 0.5% today. And that's up dramatically from where it was at the beginning of last year, where it was only 0.1. So on the safe investments, you've been earning about 1.8% over the life of this trust. On the riskier assets, the stocks, the rate of return has been around 11.54. So it has been the riskier assets that are beginning the majority of the return, and that has been an unusual period of time of historically low interest rates. Going forward, it is our opinion as a firm that interest rates unfortunately are going to stay below historical averages and take longer than normal to get back to normal rates of returns. So that's a highlight of how we got to where we are today. I'll have you move to page 12 and just highlight two more things and then answer any questions if there are any questions. The portfolio manager who's not here tonight, Merle Waters is his name, sent along these two charts. And the first one is about, on page 12, it's about how a good year can have a few bad months in it. And it's a pretty interesting chart. It goes back to 1980. And what it's showing you is mid-year, specifically about stocks, what the low point was throughout the year and then where it finished in the year. And what it's designed to illustrate is you can have several years where markets decline significantly throughout the year, but yet still have a positive year. Most recently would be last year, where the stock market was down 7% at one point, but finished up 11% for the year. A more dramatic example would have been 2010 or 2009, where at one point in time it was down 28% and it finished up 23%. That's just stocks, though. That is not the entire portion of your portfolio. And then the last chart that was included here on page 13 just shows the risks of trying to time the market. We do not, at Wells Fargo, try to time the market. We believe that we want to have exposure to these different types of investments over a long period of time to get you a competitive rate of return. And we know, and this chart it indicates this, that if we miss some of the few good days in the market, it can have a huge negative impact on the rate of return. So what this chart is showing from 1989 through the January of 2016, if you would have missed just the 10 best days in the market, your rate of return on stocks went from 7.6% all the way down to 4.9. And that's amazing when you think about that time frame, 1989 to January of this year. If you would have missed just the 20 best days, your return would have gone from 7.6 down to 3.1. So we don't try to time the market, but what we do and what we have done with the board is we try to identify investment assets that are undervalued and put more money into those areas, and those that are overvalued or we think may be risky and put less into those areas. That process is called tactical asset allocation, and that's something we've been doing at Wells Fargo since 1976 with client monies. So that's a summary of who we are, how the money's being managed, and how it's being performed. Any questions from the board that you'd like me to address? Yeah.
So is this enough of a balance to meet our demands, our liabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ted. The intellectually honest answer, and I'll steal it from a professor I had at Wharton, Professor McKinley, who would say, we don't know. But the answer you're looking for is we expect it to be. So we do believe over a 10 to 15 year period of time that this portfolio will give you the return needed to meet your long-term liquidity needs. Okay, so what we have is a debate going on within our industry among us as the experts and financial advisors, the people managing money that are in the industry, and on the academic side. If you look at the top finance schools in our country today, there's been this discussion about, will future rates of returns be in line with historical rates of returns? And I'm purposely putting my hands in two different spots because I believe, and there's been a lot of discussion in many on both sides, the academic side and the professional side, that future rates of returns could and may likely be lower for a lot of justified reasons. It has to do with so many things, some things that are pretty straightforward, like the amount of debt that's around the world today. Debt tends to slow down rate of economic growth. Higher tax brackets over time tend to slow down rates of growth. Lower population growth over time, specifically in developed countries. The U.S., as you know, has slightly positive population growth. Europe has flat only because of immigration. We're slightly positive as well, only because of immigration. Some countries are actually shrinking, like Japan, that used to be an economic power, and the population is declining. So there are variables that's causing an environment where future rates of returns may not be as high as historical rates of returns, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it in our country all over the place, in interest rates, in lower inflation, and things like that. Interest rates and inflations tend to be huge determinants on future expected returns. Interest rates is common, straightforward. If they're higher, other things competitively get higher. If inflation is lower, inflation acts like a hurdle in the investment world. So the higher inflation is, the higher investment returns have to be for investors to take risk or tie their money up. The lower inflation is, the lower that expected return becomes, and we're in a very low inflationary environment because of some of the issues I just cited. So at Wells Fargo, we have lowered our future expected rates of returns on virtually every asset class, and that's through a process that we do every year. And some of the other larger firms that do that process as well are in alignment with us. So to answer your question going forward, we believe that this will get the desired rate of return, but there is and has been a trend towards investments earning lower rates of returns, and that's something that we will have to monitor as a firm, and then advise your board on what impact that might have on how we're structuring the portfolio.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. My daughter, number 4, just graduated as well, and ours was indoor.
Okay.
First of 4 to be indoors, and I did find it a little more intimate and closer to the students, and it worked out well as well.
Congratulations.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Yep.
Next up is letter D, information on the consent agenda. I'll be presenting on this one. Recently, on 2 separate occasions, Member Landwehr has inquired of the board if any of us had investigated personal issues prior to voting. One of the instances, I believe, was during the reductions and eliminations, and then as recently as last board meeting for the personnel report, had we researched to see if these actions are appropriate. And I can't speak for anyone else, but in both instances, I was somewhat taken aback. My belief has always been that personnel responsibilities are delegated to the superintendent from the board to HR to administration, so that would be the general, that's my belief. And also that even to have conversations about personnel issues in an open meeting would be violation of data privacy laws. But what I'll say is after the meeting, and having the question come up a couple times, I was compelled to inquire as to whether or not we are in fact conducting lawful business here and how we're doing it. So what I did is I requested a legal opinion from the school board's attorney. And my intention now is that I'm going to read the legal opinion. And the purpose of this is twofold. One is so that everyone here is familiar, and it's in board book as well, but also for the viewing audience and for the general public, so that they understand that per the school board's attorney, we are in fact, as a whole, as we're conducting our business, it is lawful. So bear with me, it's a fairly long opinion, but, and it's, Dear Chair Larkin, I'm writing in response to questions that have been raised by one of the school district's board members regarding the use of the consent agenda. Since I have had numerous conversations with former board chairs and this particular board member in recent years relating to the consent agenda and the appropriate role of the school board, I am providing a written legal opinion with advice for the entire school board to consider for future meetings. Minnesota Statute 123B.09 Subdivision 1 provides that care, management, and control of independent districts is vested in the school board. Minnesota Statute 123B.02 clarifies this role involves the general charge of the business of the district. With this in mind, the Minnesota School Board Association has provided training to each of the district school board members as required by Minnesota Statute 123B.09 Subdivision 2, and MSBA has developed an extensive series of policies which the School Board of Columbia Heights Public Schools has adopted. Regarding the role of the school board, Columbia Heights School Board policies in the 200 series clearly recognize the preferred role of the board as governance and policymaking, as a policymaking role. Each school board member has an ethical obligation to follow Columbia Heights School Board Policy 209 Code of Ethics, which in part requires each board member to vote his or her conscience, not to abstain unless a conflict of interest exists, support the decision of the entire board, even if the board's member position concerning an issue was different, inform him, herself about the proper duties and functions of a school board member, focus on education policy as much as possible. Remember, a board member's responsibility is to set policy, not to implement policy. Recognize that a board member's responsibility is exercised through actions of the school board as a whole, to see that the schools are properly run and not to run them him or herself. Work through the superintendent, not over or around the superintendent. Delegate the implementation of school board decisions to the superintendent. Guard the confidentiality of information that is protected under applicable law, and comply with all school district policies as adopted by the school board. As stated above, state law requires that MSBA provides training to school board members, and it does so in part through model policies which Columbia Heights Public Schools has adopted. Although Minnesota Statute 123B.02, subdivision 14, vests authority in the school board to employ and discharge employees, that does not mean that the school board members should be directly involved with that process. Instead, MSBA advises school boards to entrust the school district's administrative team with handling the day-to-day tasks relative to personnel matters. Once that trust has been placed in the superintendent and the entire administration team, the school board's role is to allow those administrators to perform the duties entrusted to them, since the administrators have the expertise to do so. It is confusing, ineffectual, and poor risk management for the school board to delegate and yet attempt to retain the day-to-day management of personnel matters when board members may lack the experience to do so. Purpose and effect of consent agenda regarding the personnel report. Just as MSBA advises the school board to defer the administrative recommendations related to hiring staff, the same is true of dealing with personnel matters, that through presentation of the personnel report on the consent agenda. It is the responsibility of the administrators hired by the school board to make recommendation to the school board for action. One board member has challenged the use of the consent agenda for approving leaves of absence, hiring, terminations, resignations, layoffs, payment of stipends, etc. Not only is this position contrary to the purpose and the specifics of Columbia Heights Public School Policies 200 series, but is also contrary to the principle of Minnesota Statute 13.43, which is personnel data. That statute protects employees from breaches of confidentiality of data collected and maintained by the school district relating to their employment, and restricts access to those data to only those individuals with the need to know such information to be able to perform their job functions. For the same reason that MSBA advises against allowing individual school board members to retain copies of the superintendent evaluation forms and to only summarize the evaluation results at a public meeting, it is also inadvisable to release the school board members sensitive private personnel data that might underlie certain personnel actions. If the authority of the school board is to have the general charge of the business of the district under state law, then what need is there for the individual board member to have access to private personnel data on matters of a routine nature? Should this board member be privy to an employee's medical need or for a leave of absence or personal reasons of employee who has chosen to resign? Would the board member then be able to evaluate those reasons in the context of a complex web of state and federal laws to determine whether the leave should be granted or the resignation accepted? This is very different from a situation in which employee performance issues resulted in a proposed termination and separation agreement, which would require school board members to have access to private personnel data prior to making a decision on the administration recommendation. This is not the case with the matters presented on the consent agenda. Further, Minnesota Statute 123B.02, subdivision 1, vests decision-making authority in the board, not individual members. It is the opinion of MSBA, and I share this opinion, that individual board members do not have the power to exercise the rights of the school board on their own. One of your board members wants to independently investigate the personnel items on the consent agenda, such as whether an employee should be paid a stipend, granted a leave of absence, allowed to resign, hired upon recommendation of the administration, or similar personnel actions. Since the board exists as a legal entity, with individual members having no rights outside that entity, an independent investigation into routine personnel matters could only occur by the school board as an entity. To change the current practice relating to the personnel report on the consent agenda, the school board would need to adopt a resolution authorizing access by all board members to personnel files and any other information they feel necessary to be able to make a decision on personnel items appearing on the consent agenda. Although changing this practice is possible upon a majority vote of the school board, the question becomes, then what? Presumably, the administrators hired by the school board have the expertise to perform this work, which is why they make their recommendations for personnel actions to the school board. If board members had access to personnel files for routine school board actions, would this truly make for a more informed decision? Or should the administrators familiar with the human resources, non-discrimination laws, employment and labor agreements, whom you have entrusted to make recommendations for personnel actions, be allowed to do so based on their expertise? It is my legal opinion that these administrators should be allowed and empowered to perform the work for which they were hired. Absent malfeasance, which does not exist here. Otherwise, there is no need to employ and pay administrators to manage the day-to-day operations of the school district if the school board wants to assume this role of micromanagement. In summary, I do not recommend making the change to have school board members conduct independent investigations into routine matters on personnel report before voting on the consent agenda. To do so creates risk to the protection of private and confidential data of employees. It is inconsistent with current Columbia Heights School Board policies. It is not supported in state law and is out of step with best practices of other Minnesota school districts and recommendations by the MSBA. Feel free to contact me with any follow-up questions or concerns. Sincerely, Karen Keppel. Again, and we can certainly have a discussion about it. I'm more than happy to do that, but I just wanted to, again, for the board as a whole and for the viewing audience to understand that we are currently operating, the way that we should be with the consent agenda and some of the other personnel issues under the advice of our attorney. Yes?
Yeah, I have a few points on that, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I'm not sure that this was appropriate to read it out loud. I mean, there's attorney-client privilege, so reading this in public might have violated that, and having it as a public part of the school board packet may have violated that, and that's not good practice at all. So I raised that question. Number two, I never questioned that whether approving the consent agenda was actually lawful business or not. If you go back and look at the recordings of our school board meetings, you'll see that I never questioned that at all. So that's not the issue at all. That I don't know where that's coming from, and that I'm taken aback by that. The third issue is that the questions that were addressed in the opinion are simply that. It's the opinion of one attorney, Karen Keppel, and there are clearly in the statutes it states that we are part of the school board is has a management control of the school district. That's 123B09. The word general, if you look it up, refers to wide encompassing. If you look that up in the dictionary, affecting or concerning all or most. And so that argument simply just bolsters what I've been saying all along, that the school board, has the general care, management, and control of the school district. So the question I raised, just to clarify, and I won't go on very long here, is that if the school board, the school board was asked tonight to approve the actions, and this was the exact motion that we passed in the consent agenda, approve the actions required for implementation of the personnel report, all those items in the personnel report. And in order to implement that, we must, as a clerk and as you know, as chair, we must sign the contracts. So I believe it does require board approval, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Kelly, to implement these actions. Otherwise, why would we have this motion in the first place? Then if we're required to do that and we don't know what's the background is, how is that ethical that we're actually voting every school board meeting on items that we have no background on, and it says that in 209, policy 209, Code of Ethics, that I should and not must, as Attorney Keppel says that this is a requirement, and again, that's a misstatement, is not a requirement. It says school board members should follow this Code of Ethics. It's optional, or it's aspirational. So that's an error. I should vote their conscience after informed discussion unless I abstain because of a conflict of interest exists. you can look at the tape, a recording of all of our school board meetings. We have not had an informed, as far as I know, an informed discussion on any of this. As we clarified in the last few meetings, Superintendent Kelly will not discuss it with us, claiming that it's all protected by data privacy. I simply raised the question, how can we ethically vote on personnel matters to approve them, to enact them, without having informed discussion and without having, I can't do that in good conscience, and maybe, that's simply my point. So I want the community to know that. I'm not trying to raise anything improper, or I don't know why also we spent the money on, getting this legal opinion, because I simply raised the question that this is an ethical concern of mine. It's in our code of ethics, and if anything, we should be addressing that, not whether this is legal to approve a motion in a consent agenda to implement personnel issues. So it's the wrong issue, it was the wrong question, and I still stand by, if you look at the statutes, which I have, and I've looked at the case law as well, it says the board is responsible for hiring and firing and all personnel issues, and as a board, then we can't have the responsibility without also having the right to be informed whether those issues are proper, and also being able to serve as the check and balance, which the school board is, which clearly is the policy of is the legislative strategy that's set up in the legislature and in the statutes. So I'm sorry I'm not real eloquent. I feel like I'm being sort of attacked here, and it's not comfortable at all for me to be attacked, and no one should be attacked on this school board.
Anybody else have something they want to say?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of questions here. Number one is, are you suggesting that the only way that it seems to be able to resolve this to your satisfaction is that all board members have access to all of the personnel data?
I'm not saying that, no, I don't know that has to be the case. All I am saying is that board members must be able to be satisfied to their satisfaction that these actions are proper, because the board has the responsibility for these actions.
So
And I'm not saying you have to dig into everybody's personnel file,
I'm
as
just
it seems to
asking how we
suggest
can
in
resolve this,
memo.
because this has come up on numerous occasions. Okay, I mean, it's our responsibility to work with the superintendent through these processes. Do we all need to have access to this to be able to be properly informed? I'm trying to resolve this here. I mean, I don't personally feel comfortable with the idea, of anybody being able to look through all this stuff, and we really don't have a need to know. If we do have a need to know, it does come before the board as a closed session. There are certain circumstances that do fall under our direct supervision if they're outside of basically what amounts to standard stuff. People retiring, people getting hired, there's a lot of standard business that happens in this. So I'm trying to figure this out, because I don't understand why you're even abstaining, because I don't see that you have a conflict of interest. You should be voting against it, not abstaining. You don't have a conflict of interest. You don't work for, do you?
I don't even know enough to vote against it, and neither do any of you, as far as I know, unless you've been able to investigate this.
I delegate, I feel that I delegate that through the superintendent. The superintendent puts forward the proposals. If somebody were to ever come to me and say that there's an issue with it specifically, then that would be a matter I would handle through the superintendent. I wouldn't go dig in anybody's file.
Right, and
Member Landwehr, I do take issue with the fact that you just made a statement saying that we aren't making informed decisions. I completed the MSBA training just last year, and the letter that was read tonight to the public is basically a summary of the MSBA training in our role of what a school board member is. I think that, as I stated, I think it was 2 weeks ago, your view of what a school board member is and my interpretation are vastly different. I do not feel like I'm qualified. I have not had the education or expertise to manage a school district or to make personnel decisions. So My role as a board member is to entrust the district to do that. We are informed, it is brought to the board. Right now, we always have a majority to move forward, and I think that we need to take it as it is, that the majority of the board feels we're doing the good business that we are doing, and that we have an individual board member who is not in the same position. But don't call into question whether or not I'm acting appropriately as a school board member.
And again, I would say don't call into question that I'm acting inappropriately as a school board member. Again, it's the same issue that's being, a standard that's being applied to me. I'm not calling into question that you're acting inappropriately. What I am calling into question is and MSBA is not the law. MSBA is an association for school board members. I'm across the state that provides training, and I don't know exactly what in the training states that we are not to look into. The school board members are not allowed to oversee the superintendent and to oversee the affairs of the district. In fact, I think that's what my training taught me, that we are a check and balance to this district. So again, if we cannot be a check and balance if we're kept in the dark about these issues that we are clearly voting on to approve. And that's my only point.
I'd like to just take a step back and talk about the difference between blind faith and trust. I think there's maybe a sense from when you say, and this isn't an attack on you personally, it was just kind of the words that people are choosing, and when you're telling me I'm not making an informed decision, I kind of have to disagree. Am I showing some amount of trust in Superintendent Kelly? Yes, but it's not a blind faith in the sense that I don't get to see the names. I don't get to see how this plays out in life and in practice. So it's not a matter of, I think there's a discomfort in the level of information. I'm okay here. Certain people are okay here. Other people are okay here. Am I making sense at all? And I think that's where we're kind of stuck as a group, right? What kind of information does each person need to know to feel comfortable with this? And for me, we're seeing those names, we're seeing them, and I mean, we're obviously not reading them aloud, but we're seeing them. I felt like if we had any questions, we could, as a group, ask to know. Is that correct, as a group? I'm not sure. But this is a point, there's a difference between blind faith and trust, and I feel like I'd like to just point that out.
I'm not sure. Could we ask, if we asked as a group, it would have to be an open meeting, I would assume. So that kind of does, break into the data privacy, and as an individual, we don't have any authority. So I'm trying to figure out, how we can resolve this, because quite frankly, I just want this resolved at this point. I feel like I understand the steps that go through for being able to make personal decisions. I was a personnel manager at one point, not for a big school district, so there's all sorts of extra rules when you have contracts and stuff. But I am familiar that, those files were kept locked up for a reason. And it wasn't appropriate even for a manager to go in there unless there was even a manager could not go into the personnel file without going through me, and they had to have reason, specific reason. So I'm just putting that out there. I have a level of, not blind trust. I like the way you stated that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Not a blind trust, but trust.
Just so if all we're relying upon is the superintendent's statements and the administration, okay, then clearly that should be made known to the public, that's all the school board is relying upon. It's been made known. Good point number one. I don't think that's appropriate. And I think that we're not having a check and balance as we should. Number two, the memo did say that the school board could authorize further investigation into the personnel files if necessary, and I would hope that all of us would not dig any further than we have to make sure to satisfy. I certainly wouldn't. So that's another option. Number three, the other option to solve this is that we could just acknowledge the actions that are taken on the consent agenda, not just the personnel actions. We could even approve the minutes, the other consent agenda items, acknowledge, I'm perfectly fine with acknowledging the report that's in the board packet. That would not require further investigation. It's all before us. So 3 options that, and I guess I would prefer the last option that, and I brought this up many times before. So it continues to be an issue, and that's my suggestion.
Define acknowledge, if you would, Ted.
Acknowledge is, the administration has put forth a list of personnel changes. We would acknowledge these are the personnel changes that have happened.
We would actually read the personnel changes, or
Nope.
just acknowledge that they've taken place?
Just to acknowledge that they would have taken place as reported.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Northeast Metro 916, long-term facility maintenance levy allocation.
Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly. We are starting to gear up for next year's levy, and that's what this is about tonight. As you know, in the past, we've always brought the health and safety pieces from District 916 to the board so that it's ready for the levy when we get to September. As you know, when we looked at this last year, when our district brought forward a 10-year plan for our long-term facilities maintenance, all the health and safety is rolled into that piece of revenue. So all our deferred maintenance, all our health and safety is rolled into one. And so tonight, I need you to just look at what District 916 is bringing forward, and they're actually combining this year 2 into 1. This took place last year, and they levied the health and safety last year, but they did not start the long-term maintenance. So this year, you'll see that there's actually 2 years into 1. I included these spreadsheets in your packet. You can see that they're looking at $275,000 for a 2-year period, and our responsibilities at $15,000. $685. That will be included into our levy for them next year. The next sheet gets a little harder to read because the numbers are so small. But you can see if you take 17 and 18, you put those together, it is $275,000. So again, District 916 does a lot of very good work for our district, especially in our special ed areas. We're a true partner with them, and this is something we've done for many, many years. It's just now we have a new label of long-term facility maintenance revenue instead of the health and safety. Now, I've included a resolution to take care of that for this next pay 2018 levy. Any questions?
So the 15,685, that's paid out over 2 years, or is that?
That's going to include the year we just finished up. We just finished up and next year's levy. So when we get to the next year at this time, you'll see that number go down.
Okay. Good, thank
But
you.
pretty much in half.
Anybody else have any questions for Bill on this? We'll be bringing this back at our next.
We'll bring this
board
back to the next board meeting, the 28th of June, to take action so it's ready for the levy for the fall.
Thank you. I think you're up again. We've got the Twin Cities North Chamber of Commerce membership. Want to talk about that?
Yes, this evening, we're bringing this to you as an information item because the fee has gone up. We pretty much usually go along year by year with, $5, increase. Here, we're looking at close to $200. So we wanted the board to understand that it's a relatively large increase. We've been a member of the chamber for many, many years. I think it's a very good idea that we have a place where we can visit with different business owners as a school district. And I think we get a better look at what they're discussing and what's important to them, especially when we look at our levies and so forth. So we bring this as an information item that it's going to be an increase in membership for the next year. But from my point of view, I think we should continue it.
Questions?
What's the current membership fee?
I believe it's 210. Is that right, Don?
Did they give reasons for the increase?
No, I did not receive any reasons why.
So it's more than doubled.
Yeah, it did doubled up. Oh, maybe it was the high 200s. I'm sorry. I'll make sure that number is included in the next board update from the superintendent, so you know what the difference was.
Here it is. It was 260 last year, 415.
Okay. So it's over $150 increase.
Any other questions for Bill? Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the Strategic Direction C, know and honor who we are to build strong relationships.
Superintendent Kelly, Chair Larkin, members of the board, thank you for inviting us here this evening with Principal Fort, Principal of Valley View Elementary, to present on Strategic Plan C. Columbia Heights creates worlds of opportunity for every learner. And I'd like Principal Fort to address what core values we'll be discussing today.
Well, core values, all of our core values are community, excellence, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage. I would say that we are addressing all, if not all of those core values today in some manner or another.
What Strategic Direction C is about is really knowing who we are and honoring who we are. to build strong relationships. So I'd like to go over the matrix of what areas we look at in Strategic Direction C. One of the important things that the community and the school district decided was to increase our enrollment in our pre-AP and AP classes. And all of you, I'm sure, were there and recall not so long ago that we received the National Award for the Small School District of the Year in having AP classes that meet all of our kids' needs and that all of our students who are capable and willing attend and do well. So we are at level 4. We set the standard very high. I almost feel like we should be at level 5 because of the national award, but it certainly eggs us on to keep improving. Did you want to talk about the curriculum principle for it?
Okay. For our curriculum is one of the goals, our SMART goals, is to enrich curriculum with a variety of cultural perspectives. And what we found was, with the help of the Teaching and Learning Department, that provided me information, research from our district pre-K through 12th grade online curriculum warehouse, which is called Atlas, that we have good news that approximately 63% of our curriculum content currently contains information that would be considered multicultural. Teaching and Learning Department, as well as building principals, are working with teams of teachers to further enhance our curriculum. We are fortunate to work in a highly diverse school district. We want our students' educational experiences to be culturally relevant. We believe if they see themselves represented in the curriculum, this will happen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Exactly. Family involvement programs, for example, our REACH program, which we run every year for targeted families of color that we invite. We're doing very well there. Equity teams are at every single building and at the district level. Cultural family events with community members sharing. We're very strong working with our community, working with the police and the fire and the city and our school district, as well as doing in-house cultural family events. Very exciting. Reducing suspensions and referrals of students of color to reflect the general population. That's an area we need to continue to work very hard at, and we do with the building principals, so we can see some improvement there. Licensed staff demographics compared to our student population is pretty average for our area. And the students and families feel welcomed into the district schools measured by family satisfaction and climate surveys. And 90% or more, every single survey we do with our families, all families feel welcome in our buildings. And that's a real testament to Principal Ford and the rest of the principals in every building we have. And then the digital divide, Director Hennekens helped us get this information. And he said that 92% of students surveyed report that they have access to technology, whether that's internet, Wi-Fi, smartphone, whatever, outside of the school day. And that's markedly improved from what it would have been 5 or 10 years ago. So this is just another way to look at the levels that we're at. Here's the matrix to show what the scoring and the weighing is. And this is what I'm super proud about. We like to see the needle move forward in all of our areas. And as you can see, the Strategic Direction C overall score in 15 was 3.2, and in 16 is 3.95. And my goal would be just to inch it a little bit more and get us into the 4s. Be excited to see that. So the SMART goals, Principal Fort discussed the C2, enriching curriculum with a variety of cultural perspectives. And we, in the elementaries, he noted that we have about 60% of our classes. District-wide, it's around 40%. It's harder as you get into the secondary and you get into algebra to get cultural content, but we're really committed, and all the teachers are very committed to doing that. And then to reduce the suspensions and referrals of students of color to reflect the general population.
Right now, it's about 22.6% difference between the demographics and the general population. We'd like to see that reduced 5%. I think 5% is realistic. Over the years, we have reduced it. The year before, we reduced it from fiscal year 15 to 16 by 4%. So I'd like to continue to get that reduced down, and the buildings work very, very hard on that. Questions?
Questions or comments, anybody? Deb?
Yeah, I just have a question as far as reducing the referrals to match the general population. That seems kind of odd in the sense that if someone needs to be referred, it shouldn't matter what their race or ethnicity is.
Correct. That's why we want to see it reflect what our demographics are.
Are you thinking that certain race or ethnicity is generating more referrals than they should be, or it just? I'm not
Well, if, for example, you have 10% of your population are from East India, then you would expect about 10% of the population would be from East India that receive suspension and referrals. So that's the general frame that the state looks at, that we look at. And so obviously, if someone is naughty and needs to be referred, or very naughty and needs to be suspended, we would do so. There's no restriction in us doing that. It's just that you would look for those patterns to follow the demographics.
Okay, so I'm clear. It's not race-based as far as how you refer. If they deserve it, they deserve it, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
all right. I wouldn't want it to be race-based. That would be discriminatory in that.
As I said, we look for it matching
Okay.
what the demographics are, and that would just be best practice, that it would line up.
Bill?
I forgot what I was going to say. I think I was just going to say that's a good job. I like to see the needle moving up, and we're almost into the green. So we have to change all the goals so we can give you another goal to shoot for. You know, what you do is you put it just a little outside the reach, but just close enough to
It's kind of
move
like
up.
when Director Stunkel and I present on the early childhood, family ed, and special ed, and it's all at 5. It shows
You
everyone in
gotta
the
cha- you
district's
gotta
doing a
change it.
really good job,
Yeah,
but maybe we need
yeah.
to increase the
Yeah.
goals, and I think we're doing a great job in knowing and honoring our relationships, so.
I agree. Thank you for all your work in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one more general comment. It's great we're seeing the SMART goals. I would like to see if we've met the SMART goals from last year and have them presented, so just to give us an indication of progress or lack
Sure.
of progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up is Personalized Learning Initiative.
Chair Larkin, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly. Tonight, Director Stenbeck and I are here to kind of give an update on the Personalized Learning Initiative and talk about things that are happening in the future. Thank you. So, as always, Columbia Heights Public Schools, creating worlds of opportunity for every learner, starting with our mission. Tonight, I think community plays a big role in this conversation because this initiative is driven by funding from the Capital Projects Levy. Obviously, collaboration, you talk about the 4 Cs and how very important they are to this initiative and moving forward with our classrooms in the future. And innovation, and we're constantly trying new things. This is new in a lot of school districts. A lot of school districts are doing some kind of one-to-one initiative, and I think there's a lot that it takes. There's a lot of learning that's happening for all of us on this. Just a kind of a reminder that we do have a technology plan that kind of drives us. This is just our kind of one-page shot of that. And at the bottom, I just want to point out that our foundation for this plan is the district mission. So, we start there and we move up with our technology philosophy and into kind of the strategies that get us to hopefully where we want to go. So I've shown this before, so I don't want to take too much time on that, but sticking with relevant and authentic student learning, digitally enhanced world-class teaching, connected and engaged families, operational systems, and service excellence. This is something we've seen a couple times before. These are our focus areas with the Personalized Learning Initiative: differentiated instruction, focus on formative assessment, engaging students with new types of learning, equity, flexible tools, and always keeping that focus of college and career readiness. Hopefully we have a video here, and I'll kind of maybe talk a little bit about it, but this is coding that's happening in the classroom. And just a note ahead of time is that this is, I believe it's 3rd grade, and this is a student that's recording this, and there's, so the whole class is working on coding on their tablets right now. Oops. Sorry, the volume's a little low. So you can see, obviously, the excitement around having success for 2 students there. One student showing the other students their success. You can see this one student here and the persistence of working through this coding problem. And I think in a second here, it's a few more. So she has to try again because she didn't get it correctly. So, now she's going back in and she's working the problem again. So we're talking about that persistence, we're talking about that engagement, and obviously there's a lot of excitement there. So that is just a fun little video, just from the fact that, it's all students. It's all, the students are recording it, the students are documenting it, and actively participating it in an engaging way. So definitely an exciting part. So tonight, I want to start with kind of talking about some data, changes in the devices for next year, just as information as we move forward. Really briefly on the tablet rollout, Zena and I will talk a little bit about staff development and kind of future things in working with the curriculum, particularly moving forward. So this is a little busy. But Bright Bytes is a new data collection tool that we're using, that we're in our 2nd year now, so we have a little bit more to work with. And as you look across the top of this screen, you see beginning is gray, emerging is pink, proficient is kind of a yellow, advanced is green, and exemplary is blue. So as we look at our areas moving forward on these slides, just kind of remember that, you're proficient, orange is proficient, so it's really actually very good to be in that proficient area, but this, we're on the beginning stages of this initiative and this role, so we're way okay with being in emerging. We know we're moving forward, and we know this is helping us to point out what areas we need to focus on. So it breaks it down in a classroom environment, talking about the 4 C's in digital citizenship, the access for the teachers and students, skills, those foundational skills, multimedia, recording things and posting things online, and then the environment, professional learning, and the beliefs of what we're doing within the classroom. So we have technology standards, and this is kind of where those 4 C's, a lot of those 4 C's come into play. And what I like about this is you see those 2 green columns, research and information fluency, technology opportunities, and concepts. And I feel very good about that, and that's some very solid foundation and knowledge. Obviously, we can see in the 4 C's areas, we've got some proficiency and some emerging work. You can see that our other schools, high school, Highland, North Park, and Valley View, all have a pink area, but that Columbia Academy is proficient. So, I think in the previous year, you would have seen that Columbia Academy had some emerging areas. So we definitely have some growth there. We have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the things that we're doing going forward. And this is the digital citizenship readiness piece. And here I'm just going to point out that our focus for personalized learning and our focus in digital citizenship has mostly been at Columbia Academy because that's had the program the longest. It's nice to see that, basically telling us that we're doing good work in that area at Columbia Academy, that they're at a level of success and ready to be, ready to move forward into the next step as far as their digital learning. Infrastructure, it's student access and teacher access. You see proficient areas at the high school and elementary. Well, the high school we're just moving into as far as the initiative goes. And Highland Elementary actually last year had their student devices replaced. And so, this is an area I think next year we'll be green with the rest of them. So it's just a matter of they were the last building in the cycle. And so we expect that information. Professional development, again, those foundational skills are in that exemplary. The beliefs are in that exemplary area. Colors are kind of hard to see. Some of it's advanced. So we know we have some areas to work with online skills and multimedia skills with our teachers. So there's a lot of great information that this can provide where we can build from. Technology support, quality of support in that advanced area is exciting to see, but we can see some areas where we can work on. And again, that Columbia Heights Senior High, we can see that I believe that the initiative will have a big impact on that building starting next year. This year, we've made the decision to move forward with Chromebooks. So last few years, we've been working with Android tablets, and these were a couple of our student helpers in that part. So we continue with Google Apps for education and management. That's been a big push for us, and the Chromebooks really align with the work we're doing in that area that fit right into the personalized learning initiative. Again, we're going to every year continue to work to determine what's the best device for the changes we're making in the program. And of course, we have to balance that with cost as well. So as we continue to bring this initiative to scale. So we will have that Chromebook rollout starting next year. And we'll have a big push, again, kind of going back to maybe the first year or two, and our focus around digital citizenship and expectations. Kind of a big thing on the expectations. We know that in the Columbia Academy we did very well with that first part, but that second part, coming into the high school, we really want to set the stage at the high school level as those kids move from 8th grade to 9th grade. They've been in the initiative, but we really want to make sure that they understand expectations in 9th grade. We continue with the support of the Personalized Learning Initiative Facilitator, and collaborating with Zena and her team on professional development. And we have technology cohorts that we're going to continue to do for next year, which is small groups with the teachers. Zena, want to?
Yeah, I would just add that working with the tech integration specialists and Brian's department is always collaborative. It's not two separate departments working in silos. Brian's in on when we're planning for and brainstorming for professional development days. And so we can't have personalized learning on the one hand and literacy separate. It's what kinds of work are we doing in literacy and how can we enhance it or make it more efficient or effective through the technology. So we work hand in hand when it comes to professional development and curriculum as well. So if we have for example, teacher leadership meetings, the tech team is there as well, looking at the curriculum and supporting side by side with us.
And our two teams met for kind of a retreat. Fortunately, Zena and I had to miss a big part of it, but they did some really good work in planning professional development over the course of next year. So we're way ahead in planning this time, and that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So we have additional technology integration specialists. I talked about this a little bit at the capital projects levy conversation a few weeks ago, that we're adding through those levy dollars. And I think that's a huge part in the push and the additional support that we need as we grow and as we learn from things that didn't go as well as we needed them to go. So that's a big part. And then we have some...
Yep, so we've really targeted math, science, and literacy areas for digital work and personalized learning. And today I was at the Minneapolis Convention Center at the AVID National Convention, and we're really working with them to think about how can we and how can Brian's team collaborate with teaching and learning to have students annotating and highlighting those texts and taking the notes, and when is it more appropriate to do it on paper, and when is it more efficient to use Schoology and other apps. So it's a collaboration there as well.
It's a lot of work. It's work in progress. Like I said, it's we have to learn from what we do and continue to work to move forward. So next year we are expanding to 4th and 9th grade. Technically we're going to move the tablets down into 4th grade, and the 5th grade will have flipped Chromebooks, and the 6th grade will have flipped Chromebooks, and the freshmen will have more of a traditional Chromebook moving forward.
And I just wanted to note that the rollout isn't surprise in September. Here you're getting Chromebooks. It's been throughout the year supporting teacher teams in preparation for implementation next year.
So there'll be a lot of work in August, moving into the school year. So we look forward to that. And just kind of key messages moving forward, as always, is that the devices that we're handing out really are just the tool. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into the professional development of kind of changing how we're traditionally teaching. True personalization doesn't always fit into our school structures, so we have to look at those structures and how they may need to change because they could be a constraint. And obviously the role of a teacher is changing, so we need to continue to work and kind of reimagine how that can be as curriculum changes, as technology changes, and how that fits together. And remember that infrastructure is extremely important. So you can have all the tools in the world, and if you can't support those tools on the back end and support those teachers, you don't have that proper infrastructure, you can't be successful. So this image is from our new media arts class, and this is kind of just a still image project that they were doing, and so a lot of fun, exciting work that's happening. And I think that is it. Any questions?
Just a comment. It's so great to see this, because this was envisioned way back in the late 90s when we remodeled the school district and put in all the infrastructure for technology. So it's great to see the students engaged, and I think it fits right in with our mission of challenging each student to reach their potential. What better way to do that than personalization? So is the staff able to adjust, or how is that going? Is it something that is an ongoing challenge, or are there best practices, and are we doing those in terms of staff development?
Well, I would say that there definitely are best practices, and
So similar to the work that we do with students, where we have to differentiate for kids and the different pace that they learn, and the different levels of background knowledge that they come, the adults are the same way, right? Okay. And so we have teacher leaders, that are, I'll say, techie, who are excited to come and join and lead sessions and support their neighbors. This year, the tech department had a technology cohort of people who are really ambitious and apt at using technology tools for educational purposes. And so we're, it's kind of twofold. We're creating teacher leaders who are really ready and on board and excited, and then at the same time supporting the general staff as well. So both. Okay. We have to differentiate for the adults just like we do with the students.
Okay. Well, it just shows you that it says, research says that the most effective factor on learning is the staff and having the right teachers. So personnel issues are so important, and I think that highlights that. Thank you.
I was looking, one of your slides was talking about where the students are and where the staff are, and it looks like the majority of them are ahead, which I agree with Ted, is important, that they're able to make sure the kids are able to challenge them. But it looks like you're making good progress with that as well, just based on the charts that you guys had up there, the little slide wheel thing.
One thing the data is showing us from a professional development standpoint is that the foundational skills are in place and the belief is in place, and all of the rest of those skills are real tangible, that we can design and develop professional development and deliver it to teachers in different ways throughout the school year. So we're excited about that. Foundations in place, beliefs are in place, all of the rest we can pinpoint.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Every Student Succeeds Act. The board will be presented with information on the Every Student Succeeds Act. And Zena, who's up?
Okay, so the Every Student Succeeds Act is what's formerly known as the Elementary and Secondary Education Act from 1965. And it encompasses, the presentation tonight will encompass Title I, II, and III, what our projected allocations will be for fiscal year 2017. So Columbia Heights Public Schools creates worlds of opportunity for every learner. And this presentation will focus on one of the core values, excellence. So really looking at Title I, the purpose is to ensure that all students have a fair, equal, and significant opportunity to obtain high-quality education and reach, at a minimum, proficiency on challenging state academic achievement standards and state assessments. So some of the key activities that we're allowed to use Title I allocations for are listed here, some examples. So additional staff, we've been able to support our elementary school and round out the curriculum with science specialists, which has been great. Our kids get to get into a science lab and do lots of work there. Another example, middle school math intervention. Another component of Title I is parent involvement. We do a lot of activities through Title I, including the liaisons at our schools. And then continuous improvement strategies. Data analysis is referring to quarterly data meetings that our teachers are able to analyze and triangulate data and then determine, they go through each of their students and determine do they need an intervention or an extension, and we're able to fund that through this grant. And then we also support our non-public. So this is a projected budget for what our preliminary allocation would be. We will get the final allocation in October. So we're able to, based on this year and previous years, project out what that budget will look like. For Title I, we've got a certain limitation on carryover. It cannot exceed 15%, so this is just under that. And then, as I mentioned in the key strategies, some of the pieces that we're doing, funding teachers. There's a mandatory 20% set aside for school improvement. As I mentioned before, parent involvement, some administration or administrative support, and then the non-public, as I mentioned, Immaculate Conception. So moving on to Title II. The purpose of Title II is to increase student academic achievement through improving teacher and principal quality, so lots of professional development opportunities. Some of the key activities with Title II is coaching on a variety of different topics, professional development, both for teaching and administrators. And then sometimes we are able to partner with, say, for example, experts from the University of Minnesota as a consultant, and we're able to fund that through Title II. So the projected 2017 budget for Title II-A is on the screen. So you can see professional development for Immaculate Conception. I'll just note that Title II-A comes to the districts in the as professional development allocations. Part B comes to the state level, and that's working on math and science, and we've been able to participate at the state level at MDE in the math and science this year, and then bring that training back. So it's kind of train the trainer. Go to MDE and do the series, and then bring it back to, this year it was really exciting to have K-12 science teachers in a series together here here at the district center. They're fascinating, those conversations. So we'll move to Title III. Title III aims to ensure that English language learners and immigrant students attain English language proficiency and meet challenging state academic content and student academic achievement. So again, some of the key allowable activities are program coordination, staff development. We offer a summer reading program that includes home visits, and then, of course, family involvement for our EL learners and families. So this is what the projected budget for 2016 looks like for our preliminary allocation. So you can see lots of salary, the summer reading program, and then hosting family involvement opportunities. So if there are any questions.
I only have one question. If you want to go all the way back to the first slide you showed where you had the Title I. Oh, no, the chart.
Sure.
The budget there. What is the school improvement, the 20% set aside? What does that look like?
Yep, so if any of our schools are deemed as a school needing school improvement, we work with the school to determine what they need. So for example, this year, 2 of our schools qualified for this additional funding. And so we were able to provide, one was called Dreambox. So Dreambox is an online math supplement so teachers were able to work with their students either before school or during a small group rotation. And we saw incredible growth that way. And when we're focusing on continuous improvement, even though we're tested MCA grades 3, 4, and 5 at the elementary level, we focused K-5. So the teaching and learning team went in and met with each of the grade level teams along with the administrators and talked about what is it that you need to improve. Let's have conversations and collaborate with each other and have that ongoing dialogue. So it's literacy, it's in general literacy support and math support. It's additional supplemental pieces.
Okay, good, thank you.
So does this money comes from the federal government then for these titles?
So it's a federal funneled through the state.
Okay. Are there any requirements that we need to show growth or assessments as to how the money is, if it's being used effectively?
Yep, so for each of them, we submit a plan. So every August, and we'll do it again this August, we pull together in this room teams for each of the schools. When we include parents and staff on those teams and work together to create those plans and submit them to the state. In addition, myself, along with the teaching and learning team, attend trainings at MDE and informational meetings, so if there's any updates. So at least this year, after we submitted the plans, we weren't asked to make any amendments whatsoever.
Okay, but nobody comes and evaluates whether we're making progress in those areas? It's just a matter of submitting the plans?
Well, it kind of depends on so for example, with continuous improvement, it depends on where we're at in terms of year 1, if we're in year 2. So for example, Columbia Academy a couple of years we collaborated with the state to look at our goals, and then this year they were off of that continuous improvement list. So it's more of a collaboration.
Okay, thank you.
Is this something that we have to do anything with moving forward, or are you just, have we already applied for this grant?
I'll bring it as an action item
That was my question.
at our next school board meeting, and then when we have actual dollar allocations, I'll bring it back.
Okay. Thank you, Zena. We'll move on to our action items. First up is the 2016-2017 budget. The board will be asked to approve the 16-17 budget.
Chair Larkin, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly. At our last meeting, we talked about our budget and a little more depth. Tonight, I bring the fiscal year 2017 original budget to you for action. And I'm just going to quickly highlight the areas that we talked about at the last meeting. First of all, it was actually, when we talk about simply just the budget, it was relatively a simple year to work on. We mainly got 2% new money from the state of Minnesota, and that was it. There really wasn't any other funding mechanisms that changed. Everything kind of came through as a status quo. And again, like I said, the 2% generates us about $600,000. When we look at our revenue from last year to this year, we're up about 350. The reason that it's not the full 600 is because we're expecting targeted services to be at a lower level than it was in this past year. So that's a drop of about $150,000. And the transportation reimbursement for desegregation, we're expecting a $100,000 decrease in revenue. So that's the difference from the 600 down to the 350. When I included this information in your package so you can read it a little easier. We can see then under the general fund, under unassigned, we really have a budget, balanced budget. I mean, we do have excess there of $673, but when we look at the total budget, that's really a very small number. But we are balanced. When we look at then the restricted areas, staff development, we're spending that down a very small amount of $19,000. When we look at compensatory, we're spending that down just a very small amount. Deferred maintenance, we had just talked about this earlier with District 916. The health and safety is rolling into the deferred maintenance. So we're seeing a change in how we're spending those dollars. So you can see that usually we spend about $230,000 on deferred maintenance. You see that next year we'll be spending $576. But that's because the health and safety is rolled into it. If you look at the health and safety line, you'll see expenditures for next year at zero. But again, we have a negative fund balance, which we've ran for all school districts do it when you look at health and safety, is we do the project and then we levy for the next year to fill the hole. And you see right now that our negative amount is $737,000. We'll be receiving $553 of that in this next year, and then in the pay 2019 levy, then that will bring the health and safety up to zero. So you can see that when you look at our total, it looks like that our fund balance is going up, by $600,000. Well, technically it is, but it's mainly filling the hole of health and safety that's actually negative. So we have a balanced budget going forward in the general fund. Secondly, food service, I think we pretty much have a conservative number here. I think we're going to save more money than this, but until we get this year totally wrapped up and finished up to know where we ended up, I'm not willing to show too much more volume there as excess revenue. But we're balanced, and we have a healthy fund balance. When we look at community education, programming going into next year remains the same. We don't see any big changes except for what Superintendent Kelly mentioned earlier with our pre-K program. We're looking at that program, and there might be some changes in our revised budget. Again, they are balanced with a over $300,000 fund balance, so we're very healthy there in Fund 4. The building fund, that's where our new capital levies project money runs through. All the money comes into that building fund. We're pretty much, we're bringing in about $1 million, spending about $1 million, and we'll be doing that for the life of that levy. When we look at debt service, you'll see a negative number there. That's actually positive for our taxpayers. Every year we can levy 105% of the amount that we need to pay our bond payments. But that's just in case someone doesn't pay their taxes. So at the end of the year, we usually have extra and we give it back. So that is actually an under levy when we get to the levy side. And we'll see that more in September. You'll see a true under levy in the debt service area. The flex account that we track our employees' dollars in there. That's just a wash in and out. Dental, we're self-insured. That's the dollars we expect, pretty much what we've been running the last few years. Student activities, they do generate about $220,000 in fundraising every year. But of course, that goes out into programs for the activities. And then earlier tonight, we talked about the OPEB trust. We're expecting a little decrease in our OPEB trust, mainly because of the what's happened with the returns this past year. But at the same time, I want you to feel good about that because we're actually overfunded for the amount that we need in that fund. You'll see that we have a balance there of well over $5 million, and to be fully funded, we need $4.5 million. So we're overfunded. So to have that drop a little bit is not going to hurt us in the long term going forward. So with that said, is there any questions?
Let's start with a motion in a second, then if there's discussion or questions. If I could get a motion to move that forward,
moved.
please. Ted?
Second.
Laura, thank you. Discussion or questions?
Was this the budget we initially, the board initially adopted in December that we're amending, or?
This is the budget, this is the original budget for the 2017 school year. So this will start July 1 in a couple weeks, going, for the next school year.
But the changes that you're making, what was that based on? Which budget was that initially based on? You're making decreases in various areas.
We pretty much do a zero fund budgeting every year. We look at what we need and try to make it fit. So I'm not changing anything from the previous years. The changes you're seeing, when I talked about the 350,000 more in revenue, that is the formula allowance that comes per student from the state of Minnesota. That's one of the big changes going into the new year. And then the other big change is the change in our health and safety, where we're getting more funds to fill that negative balance in our health and safety, and more revenue in the deferred long-term maintenance revenue fund. Otherwise, programming in the Fund 2, which is the food service, remains the same. We have a small increase there for any students that do pay this year. There's a 10-cent increase in their meals. We have to do that by federal law because the federal program actually reimburses us a higher amount than we charge. So they expect us to increase our rates until that becomes the same. So the dollars we get for our free and reduced lunches is higher per meal than what we actually charge. So we'll be seeing a 10-cent increase on those meals because we collect less than the government tells us to. When we look at community ed, I talked about that. The programming in Fund 4 or community education at this point is planned to be the same as it was this year. So if there's any changes, it's just the changes in the salaries. And we'll actually talk about that in a minute because we've asked the board to let us increase the fees a little bit for our after-school program to cover those costs. And we'll talk about that in just in a minute in the next item. Besides that, when we look at the building fund, that's our levy, our new capital projects levy, $1 million in, $1 million out approximately. We have a 10-year plan working on trying to get all our buildings, all our long-term maintenance that's a little bit behind to get caught up, and that's what that money is for. Debt service, the amount that we're spending there is exactly what the bond payments are. So we don't do any more or less, we just make the payments that are due. And then we'll touch again on OPEB trust. Those expenditures at $313,000, that's what we expect to pay out, both in actual premium for our retirees, for their health insurance that we cover a small piece as our early retirees. And then the other piece is because a lot of our employees who are retired are, older. It costs a little bit more, and we're subsidizing that premium for them. So the OPEB trust helps us cover that subsidy. So is there anything else?
I think you answered my question. So the changes you're referencing are based on fiscal year 2016, the old budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The changes come from our revised budget we talked about. I think we adopted that budget in February or early March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Correct.
Any more questions?
So this is a brand-new budget for...
This will be a brand-new
fiscal year
budget for...
From July 1 to June 30th of 2017?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next up is the Community Education Adventure Club, Mini Adventure Club fees.
Good evening, Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly. This evening, Director Holmgren and I return to you as an action item for the Adventure Club and Mini Adventures fees. We create worlds of opportunity for every learner, and that includes in our childcare programs. This evening, I'd like to focus on 3 of our core values, the first being community, given that this childcare program serves our community. The second one is on excellence, and that is in the programming and staffing that we have for both Mini Adventures and Adventure Club. And the third one is integrity, and that relates to the fiscal responsibility that we have for this program. We've brought this to you before. It's approximately a 2.5% to 3% increase. The amount you'll see for 5 days a week for Mini Adventures, for example, this current year, it's $215. It would go up to $220 a week. You can see on the screen the other comparisons. This still falls actually less than most of our neighboring programs, and so it's a very affordable program. And we are, though, needing to increase the fees commensurate to the increased cost of staffing. And then that's the same for our Adventure Club program, just a slight increase of 50 cents a day. Though there is a little bit more of a jump, and that would be for the school release days and the summer full-day programs. Those are much less expensive, significantly so, than our neighboring districts, and so we did do an increase of $2 per day. So that's basically that in a nutshell. I do have a spreadsheet with me if you'd like to know the rate changes for the past 7 years. Otherwise, I believe that that's all the information that we brought to you as an information. A reminder of what the fees include, that's meals and field trips and snacks. All of the curriculum is supervised by a licensed elementary school teacher, and that is Jody Gadiant, who does an excellent job as our Adventure Club and Mini Adventures manager. Our Mini Adventures program is 4-star Parent Aware rated, which is the highest rating. That does qualify our program and our families for receiving a Pathways 1 scholarship. And then we do also work closely with Anoka County and with the other counties on their child care assistance programs. So for some families who qualify, there might be assistance in terms of the fees. I just do want to remind you that this is a fee-based program, that it has to cover its own costs. Thank you.
Get a motion to move that forward, please.
So moved.
Laura?
Second.
Natty? Discussion? Or questions?
So it seems like the increases are just pretty much in line with inflation.
That's correct. And I work very closely with Director Holmgren to make sure that we are just covering our costs. There isn't a lot of wiggle room. We actually did not increase our supply fees, for example. It's simply about the staffing costs, which are fixed and based on adequately staffing the rooms for the ratio with the students.
Okay, thanks.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up is the bridge team concept. The board we asked to approve the bridge team concept.
Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly. Tonight, we bring back the Castle Heights Bridge Team's concept for your consideration to accept. Once this concept is accepted, we'll take this forward to architect to get some true costs of what we feel this would really cost, break that down to a phased plan, and then to look at our fundraising to see what kind of dollars we need to have to run through each phase. Again, I included this picture in your packet. I put up again for everyone to see. We still have the same main pieces to the concept, I just want to make sure I don't miss any of the list. So what the concept is covering, number one, we have pollinator gardens. Number two, council rings for our students for education. We have seating, and then a stage area, a column forest, and then some covered seating, shaded seating, a tree house, and then benches to relax on. So that is our concept. That's what the bridge team had brought forward the last couple of meetings. And we'd like to now present it to the board for consideration to take action, and then we can move ahead with putting the project together.
Okay, can I get a motion to move that forward, please?
So moved.
Laura?
Second.
Who was that?
Molly?
Molly, thank you, Molly. Okay, discussion or questions from the board?
I love it, let's do it.
Right, anybody else?
I guess I'd like to hear from, are there any comments from Mary Granlund or Chair DeWitt, co-chair?
It's been a lovely experience being part of this bridge team. I really enjoyed working with the district and my co-chair, Principal DeWitt. One thing that I would love to see move forward, continue, is the collaborative effort that started this. I think as it moved forward, it got a little bit tricky. I think we are able to move past that, and I'm excited about the prospect of this concept moving forward. So thank you so much for your approval.
Okay, there's no further discussion. All those in favor?
I have one more
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, go
Is
ahead.
this something that the bridge team then supports? I just want to make sure it was discussed and looked at and
Well,
voted on.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
and approved by the bridge team? Or was there not an approval?
So my understanding is that there was, and has come up before, and at the expense of opening a can of worms from the last one, as was talked about at the last meeting, there was a water feature that I believe is on one of the pictures that is not labeled up here right now. I understand that there might be some concerns that the district, the district has verbalized or written, but that's up to I think it's up to the board to approve or not approve specifics related to the concept at this time. My understanding is just that we present the concept. The one thing that's missing is the water feature. And I believe it is on one of the pictures that Director Holmgren has. The pretty one with the
Actually,
purple?
I guess I'd like to respond to that. I think what Mary is referring to is on the very first meeting that we had, we didn't only present the concept, we also talked about all of the brainstorming ideas that came forward on the charrette night. And one of the small groups that had the pages that were around the room had written down a water feature on it. And we included that information when we presented to the board, two meetings ago. When the architect came back in and presented to the bridge team as a group, which Mary, I know you weren't there that night.
Yeah.
There was not a specific water feature presented at that time. But there was one idea on one of the sheets at that time. Now, I guess I just want to remind everybody that this is a concept. There's nothing specific that we're presenting. It's just that this is a concept. We like to see something very similar to this when we get done. It's all going to depend on cost and how we can put the program together.
Can I see your sheets there for a second?
Mary, before we go any further, this is the concept that the motion is for and that we're going to make a decision on tonight, is that one right there. And at the risk of opening that can of worms again and going down that path, I would like to know if the board has any other questions or comments regarding the concept that's the motion that's on the table right now.
Well, then I would like to say that this is not the concept that the bridge team approved.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And I would
on
like
the
to
board?
point out the picture that that Director Holmgren has that does have, what my understanding is,
Here's what happens, Mary, and if the board decides that they don't want to approve this concept, I mean, I don't know where it goes from there, but this, and I'm trying to explain this to you, this is,
No, I
the way
understand.
this meeting is set up is this concept's been presented. We have a motion on the table in a second. And if the board approves it, then that's what happens. If the board decides not to, then that's what happens there too. But to be pulling up the other different concepts, this is the one that we're having the conversation about right now.
Okay, well, then I would like to say that this was not what the bridge team is. As far as I know, in discussion with multiple community members, this was not the concept that was agreed upon by the bridge team.
Okay, so noted.
Can I ask a clarifying question then? How did this diagram come to be if there was no agreement from the bridge team? How did we get to this?
The diagram was presented by the architect who did the charrette for us. He came in and presented to the group. I don't remember what the date was, but these particular pictures are all put together with him. We just took his information and brought it forward to the board. So we didn't develop any of these pictures. That all came from the architect. And after he presented to the whole group that particular night, this is what everybody agreed to bring to the board.
There is another picture that was provided by the Cunningham Group that clearly denoted a water feature that we talked about at the last meeting. It had purple on it. I remember it because of the color. I really liked the color contrast.
Does the board have any further questions regarding the concept? Yes, Ted, go ahead.
Was there an actual vote by the bridge team then on any particular picture?
No, it was the concept in general.
Okay, so, okay, that helps.
It was not a specific picture. It was, we were presented multiple views. And when it came forth at the last meeting, or actually 2 meetings ago, the very first work session, we went through each of the features as presented, as you can see on this overview. Picture is probably the best look.
Any other questions from the board? Molly?
I do have a question, and I know it's a little bit, tricky to have this conversation talking about a water feature at all, but hypothetically, if the board were to approve this tonight, could we as a board be eliminated from having water added to the concept? Because that legally, that's where I'm a little bit concerned about having water in general by the preschool area. I've talked about that before. I just kind of want to find out where that falls within the concept.
I don't understand your question. I guess maybe when they
Yeah.
start coming out, if we approve it and the phases come out, is,
I guess that's what I'm looking for a little bit of clarification on, and I don't know who the person would be to answer
Could I
that.
just
Thank
step
you.
in for a minute, although I was not on the bridge team? I believe that the concept that is coming forward tonight, and I believe that I wrote an email to Mary Rose today that said it does not have a water feature as part of the concept. So let us be clear on that.
Yep, and I would like to just reiterate that this is not necessarily about the water feature. Like, as I said in my email to you, this is not about the water feature. This is about the collaboration between the school district and the community and wanting to continue that.
And Mary, I was merely clarifying
Yeah.
for a board member that this concept does not have that. And I think I also communicated to you and CC'd the board that for purposes of just practicality or as a practical matter, we have placed drain tiles throughout that whole area and have a sprinkler system, and to at a cost of over $50,000. And so, as a practical matter, putting in a water feature at this point in that particular location would probably be not practical. It doesn't mean that we couldn't put in something with water somewhere else, and we are going to have those meetings with the watershed district. So it's, but I want to be very clear so that people are not confused. This particular concept does not have a water feature included.
Correct. And I want to, like I said, I just want to reiterate that this is not about any specific part of the concept. I was asked if this was what the bridge team had agreed upon. My understanding is that it is not. This is when I first began speaking, I talked a little bit about the difficulty in the collaboration, trying to discuss this change being made. I don't think the community minds that there was a change made. I think that the community minds that the change was made without discussing it with the community. We were full partners up until the end of the charrette, and then the collaboration sort of stopped for a little while. All I ask as the community representative is that the collaboration continues and that we remain partners in this. Once again, it is not about the water feature. It is about making sure that we're communicating with each other as the district, as the community, and being faithful to our community as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Ted?
Just a comment, I'm really concerned that we try to collaborate with the community as much as possible, because we are the community. And the community should run these, operate the schools. These are community schools, within the bounds of law and so forth. But if it's not, if the water feature isn't in this, could we add it later if necessary? If we come to an agreement with the administration and we find out that the community really wants a water feature, is that possible? I'm thinking it is, because we can always amend our actions, as the school board can. And it would be a great way to collaborate with the community if that was I'm not hearing that that was a firm requirement that the community made. And that we're just, we've got, it seems to me we have everything here that pretty much the community wants, except for that, if that's, and that's up in the air as well.
My understanding is from the superintendent that this particular concept, which is the one where there's a motion and a second on the table, is not going to have a water feature. Whatever discussions take place after the fact, but with the clarity that right now, what we're talking about right now, there isn't a water feature. I respect and understand what you're saying about wanting to collaborate moving forward, Mary. I appreciate your input. But in the interest of keeping things moving here, yes, sir.
So the question is then, so I believe that we could amend this later on if necessary. As a school board, we have the authority to do that. Is that correct or not? That's my question.
Of course it is.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I
Wait,
want to know.
Okay.
I'd like to call a question.
Okay. Okay, so we're doing the bridge team concept as presented.
Oh, call
Yeah.
vote, okay.
Well, we need to vote on that first of all,
We
and
need
call
to
the question.
Oh, okay,
There has to be a majority
Okay.
vote.
okay. So, what do we need, a second, or what do we need to do, or just vote on it? How do we work that?
No, that motion,
We vote on that.
that motion, it does not require a second, I
That's
believe.
correct. That's correct, I believe.
Does not?
Does not believe.
Okay, so then we just vote, and does it need to be a roll call vote, or can it be a?
No motion, just unless there's a division called of the
Okay, so
school
we
board.
are currently voting on the question being called, correct?
Yes,
Right.
Okay, which means that we're done talking, and then
we vote.
if the call the question is approved, then we go on to the vote for the concept. So Laura's saying, call the question. So we need to vote to approve calling the question or not, whatever you choose. So it'll be an all in favor, opposed, nay type of a deal. Yes.
Can we discuss that, the calling
The
of the
call.
question? I have one more comment to make, just so. before
Well,
we
now when
call
the
it.
question's called, I think we have to move forward with that without
We
further
have to-
discussion.
We have to move forward without further discussion.
The way the calling the question
Right,
is.
I'm addressing calling the question motion.
No,
So-
no, we have to.
Well, I'm just going by what you told me, which is that if the question's called, we need to have a vote, correct? And
Right,
that
the
would be
first, normally you have discussion on each motion that's brought forward, and so as part of that discussion, I'm just saying I have one more comment. That's all.
I don't know that we can do that.
I believe that the purpose
I
of
won't
that
make the
was not
comment
to.
until
yeah.
after the vote.
Okay, so.
Oh, yeah.
For the call of
Then we
question, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain? Call the question.
Now we
Passes.
vote.
Yep, and now we vote. So we're voting on the bridge scheme concept. All those in favor of the concept as presented, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next up is the appointment of board representatives.
Thank you.
We had this conversation here, I believe on the 17th. I think you're looking, is it in board book? I didn't get that far. Okay, if you would look at the following changes have been recommended, appointments of the board representatives suggested at the May 17th meeting. So changes are Laura was stricken from the liaison to Hilltop, and I was there, the subcommittee on policy. I replaced Molly. Liaisons effective July 1st through the 30th. Columbia Academy would be Natty. Highland, Natty. Valley View, Holla. Okay, that's it? Okay, can I get a motion to move that forward, please?
So moved.
Ted?
Second.
Is that Natty?
Yep.
Ted and Natty. Any discussion?
Just a clarification for the community, this was because we added two new school board members, and we left those spots open back in January. So.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next up is board policy, second reading. We'll start with a motion and a second to get this going, if we could, please. If we get a motion.
So moved.
Natty?
Second.
Laura? And I'll read them and then, go ahead.
I would request that we vote on policy 714 separately, please. The fund balance.
No, you do not need a second. You can pull that out of the block.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
We'll pull one out, 714. Okay, I'll read the rest of them here. 206, public participation in school board meetings. 208, development, adoption, and implementation of policies. 401, equal employment opportunities. 402, disability non-discrimination policy. 410, family and medical leave policy. 413, harassment and violence policy. That's 413 a second time. 415, mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. 416, drug and alcohol testing policy. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the form. So the second 413 would have been for the form. And then 416, drug and alcohol testing form. 417, chemical use abuse. 418, drug-free workplace, drug-free school. 420, student employees with HIV, AIDS, and certain other communicable diseases and infectious conditions. 613, graduation requirements. These policies appeared on the May 24th meeting for a first reading. Approval will be sought tonight, and my understanding is there has no feedback from the community. Okay, so we got a motion and a second for all but the 714. Any discussion?
So these are basically changes in the law that are the reason why we're amending these policies. Is that correct?
Aside from the swimming pool policy, correct? Is that on here?
The swimming pool policy isn't on
Oh,
there.
they're not on that one,
The majority of that, I believe, was to, a lot of these policies was to add the terms for the medical cannabis.
Or
And-
statute changes?
And there were, yeah,
Statute
various
additions
statute
and
changes.
changes.
There really wasn't anything particularly significant in any of these. Yeah, it was just a lot of additional references, and the main thing was including the medical cannabis,
Okay, that's what I saw. I
which
just
had to
wanted-
be in 28 pages of the same policy, every single.
Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments on that? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. 714, fund balance. We'll start with this one again, if I get a motion to move it forward.
So moved.
Laura's looking for
Second.
something. Molly?
Yep.
Thank you. Discussion. Just for the record, people, if you're looking in your board book, it's on page
It's way down there. 180,
180?
179.
179.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you had a question about that, Ted?
Yeah, question is I believe that this policy sets a floor of 6% for the district's fund balance, and as we learned at our work session, I'm concerned that that's too low because, and perhaps Dr. Holmgren, you can help me, is that essentially is just a little over 1 month's worth of reserve for us as a
Yes,
district?
the 4% is a relatively low number. I guess just remember, we're talking about a range here, and right now our range is 4, which I would agree is low. And I would never want to be down at 4%. But the high end right now is 10%, and we're at about 9.4, I believe. So we're at the high end of the range. So I know we talked about moving that 2%. I don't have any problem with that either. Going to 6 and 12. I don't have any problem with that at all.
That's what the policy currently
Yeah,
states. is that
and
we're
that's
going
what I
from 6
think,
to
yeah,
12.
that's what we put into the policy at this time, is to move it up 2%.
Okay, but is that, my question is the 6% then, that would just be a little over 1 month's of reserve?
That's,
Is that correct?
yes, you are
Okay.
right. If we ever got down to 6%, we have to make some drastic changes.
Would you ever see us getting down to that amount?
It would never be my hope we would ever get that low. Right now, the 10, all the years that I've been working, with schools, 10% is that goal that I have in the back of my mind all the time, is 10%. And since I've been here, we've been around that. Right now, we're a little under it. We have been over it. But, 10% is that number we really want to try to, gear to get towards.
Okay. Is there an issue if it was raised to 8% as a floor?
I think my only concern there is 8% is not very far from 9.5. So if we would slip a little bit, it puts us into a position where we really have to do some drastic cutting. And, the way that it's worded, we have to take action to change it.
Okay.
So if we did have an issue, I'd like to see us have 2-3 years to get it turned instead of just bang, we have to change it. It would really do some harm to some of our programming if we have to do some drastic cutting.
Okay.
First reading went through was the 6 and the 12. Tonight, the motion and the second on the table is for as written. Anybody else have any questions or discussion or comments on that?
My comment is that this helps a lot, and my concern is that we do have enough to carry the district through at least, the amount of time it would take to borrow or to make provisions should the district need to do so. Is that, do you see that as happening with this range of 6 to 12%?
And I think the 6 to 12%, it puts us in a very healthy range. We talk about wanting to be sturdy, and that's close to that 10% goal. We want 10%. That puts us in a very sturdy position. It gives us enough of dollars available if we do have some type of situation that comes where we're going to see a bounce in our fund balance. We have enough there to carry us.
Okay.
We don't want to see that negative number ever. We don't want the state to come in here and tell us how to run the school district.
Right.
We want to remain independent, and by doing that, we need to have some type of fund balance. So I think moving it up is no problem whatsoever. I certainly want it to be in that range. That's a healthy range for us. But I don't think at this point in time that we need to push it quite a little bit more. That's something we can revisit at a different time.
Well, as someone who's gone through statutory operating debt as a board member on the district board, I'm very concerned about that. So I'm comforted that is a range that we would help avoid that issue. And okay.
And I believe that in the past, when you were on the board, the district was at 0, and we were in statutory operating debt.
Right.
And since I have been superintendent, we've never even hit the floor of 4. So I think that by raising the floor to the 6, it would be highly improbable that we would be dipping even below 6, let alone to 0 or into statutory operating debt, which would then give us 3 years to get out of that. So I don't think we've been very sturdy in the last 10 years, and I think we'll remain the same even through all of the recession. We've been very sturdy. We've never had a problem with dipping below the fund balance policy.
Or do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, and I'm happy to see this because we're actually, increasing the lowest fund balance by 50%, which sounds like a really big number, but it's only 2%, so that should be a pretty easy goal. And if we do ever want to increase it, we should do it. I would feel very uncomfortable with increasing it drastically over a short period of time. It needs to be. We need to find that equilibrium, and I think 10% looks like it's about ours, although I think we've been up as high as 14 or 15 on some of the years that I've been on the board, so.
At one point, we were in the low 14s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was mostly because the state was withholding, so you were keeping a little bit more.
We're working very, very, very hard to make sure that we had enough money to get by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's good management. I feel comfortable with the 6.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a good rationale to leave it at 6 then as a floor, because first of all, we don't want to have to take drastic measures. And if this policy forces us into kind of a sequester type situation where we have to take drastic measures, that's not healthy for the school district either. So thank you.
students.
And I would just emphasize, and we had this conversation multiple times, that doesn't mean you need to get up to 12 by next week. I don't want, my personal thought is that our programs don't suffer, or the kids don't suffer because we're now, trying to reach this whatever, number. So, and that's your deal to make sure you take care of, but, as far as being, sound and fiscally sound, but finding that balance. But I don't want you walking away going, okay, I got to get up to 12%, by the end of the year.
Okay, well, that's good, because we probably won't be at 12%.
Okay.
By the end of the school year, the fiscal year?
Yeah, like 2 weeks to go, yeah.
Yeah.
And just for clarity, this policy doesn't require that is within a range.
You'd have to be out there selling
6 to 12.
pencils, wouldn't you? The street.
Anybody else? Okay, so we are voting on fund balance 714. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next up is board topics. Anybody have anything for board topics?
Parade's coming up.
Parade is coming up next
And-
Friday, a week from Friday, 24th?
It's always fun.
Is it the 24th?
It is the 24th,
It's
yes.
the 24th.
Okay, yep, okay. Anybody else? Board topics? Ted?
Speaking of the parade, are we going to be able to hand out our tattoos again?
I think it was in the board
Yep,
report.
it's in the
that
board
was, yeah, the
report.
All right, so look forward to that, Candy.
Tattoos, but not candy. is what I
Not
said.
candy. No,
Okay.
that's right.
Anybody else? Hate to say this, but this is a short meeting compared to lately. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna adjourn the meeting at 9:18.